Hare Krishna, welcome back to my channel Indian Urvashi. So let's start with the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There will be no slokas in this till I end the 18th chapter of this book. But I'm gonna give you what synopsis it has because second chapter and I think 11th chapter is little bit very long. Okay, if you are someone who is very new, who doesn't is very much comfortable in reading shlokas of Sanskrit, then you might take at least 3 to 4 days to complete that whole second chapter. It is that much long. I'm gonna give you a short synopsis. So what happened that Arjuna advised to Lord Krishna to place his chariot in between two armies in the first one, so that he may behold the war-minded warriors who dare to risk their life by fighting against such a valiant warrior. But the same heroic, zealous, Arjuna, at the sight of his kinsman, becomes overwhelmed with grief. His limbs give way, his mouth is parched. His bravery turns into faint-heartedness, and he slips into the seat of the chariot. Sanjay conveys the same feelings of Arjuna, who was drowned in distress and despondency. And after seeing that, Lord Krishna, being surprised, asks Arjuna why he has developed faint-heartedness instead of valor and zeal at this juncture. A man is surprised in two ways: out of his own ignorance and as a warning to others. Lord Krishna's surprise here is a warning to Arjuna that, he may be aware of his duty. It is because faint-heartedness that Arjuna perceives it righteous not to wage war and unrighteous to wage war. Therefore, to warn him, Lord Krishna says it is impotence, rather than the righteousness not to wage war. So he should abandon this, weakness. In the first chapter, Arjun gave several arguments against the war, but without attaching importance to his arguments, Lord Krishna suddenly scolded Arjun for his faint-heartedness and ordered him to array himself to wage war. So Arjuna, without getting any satisfactory reply to his arguments, got excited and spoke abruptly. He said, in this second chapter that I'm not turning away from war because of faint-heartedness, because it is unrighteous. It's not right for me to fight with, revered grandsire Bhishma and venerable teacher Drona. I would be called unmanly if I were afraid of death. Both Bhishma and Drona, being elderly, are venerable and, adorable. They have a right to attack me, but it is deadly sin for me to fight against them, with my arrows. Lord Krishna, in the second and third verses in this second chapter, orders Arjuna to array himself by casting off. Arjuna, however, perceived only evil in waging the war. He did not see any good in this. He had also said that Duryodhan and his companions, being goaded by greed and were prepared to wage war. Now Arjuna says for himself that if he carries out his order and wages, he will enjoy only blood-sustained pleasures. Today, in the name of unity in society, people are determined to abolish caste stage of life, but they are not thinking about the disastrous consequences that this abolition would force people to lead a degraded and demonical life. The feelings of elders and preceptors such as Bhishma and Drona are noble and pure, even while waging the war. They have no partiality, and no, the holy words of God had a very singular effect and exerted a deep and far-reaching influence on Arjuna, as a result of which he starts doubting the correctness of his decision not to wage war. In such a state of mind, he said, I cannot decide whether I should wage a war. He got confused because you consider it better to wage war, but I do not do so, as it is a sin, to kill my noble preceptors. After listening this, the blessed Lord, the Krishna said, Arjun, you are grieving for those who should not be grieved at. Okay, you are having mercy upon those people who are actually not, person that are of, like, you should do mercy on, yet speak as if a man of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. At the beginning of the Gita, Dhritarashtra asks, why, what did my sons and the sons Pandu do? It shows his partiality towards his own sons and attachment. Arjuna also developed the same attachment, but he had no partiality. Arjun's limbs were giving away and his mouth getting parched. the root of such feelings in his identity with the body, and such identity creates affinity for those who nurse his body. The departing soul, has to eat and drink the phlegm and tears shed by the relatives. So we should not lament the death of a relative but should perform obsequies. The departing soul hereafter drinks the tears shed by the relatives. Here, it is written in the Skand Puran Brahma Setu. It's the 48 by 48. Here he says, discrimination between the real and the unreal is called Panda wisdom. And one who has developed discrimination is known as Pandita. And such wise men do not grieve because they cannot discriminate between the real and the unreal. It is blunder to accept a thing which is not one's only thing, which may even ever live with us and with which we may ever live, can be our life. In fact, there was never a time when I or you, these kings were non-existent, nor it is right that we shall cease to see in the future. Lord Krishna in this verse says that the bodies are perishable while the self is imperishable. This is a very confusing statement to understand if you don't know about Bhagavad Gita at all. But the question arises, how in the middle these bodies are visible? So here he also tells about the Sankhyayoga in the second chapter. As an incident of the past and the future is perceived far away, so also an incident for the present. The reason is that we have no connection with the past and future. Similarly, we have no connection with the present. When we have no connection at them at all, then what is the difference between past, future and present? These three are within limit of time, but self transcends the time of time. Time has divisions while the self is eternal and inadvisable. If we perceive in the right perspective, we come to know that the body does not pass through babyhood, youth and old age only, but it also changes every moment, So a man passes through babyhood, youth and old age, and thus there is a change in his body, but experiences that he is the same. It proves that there is no change in his soul. That is what said Krishna to Arjuna. Here in Sankhyayoga in the second chapter, Krishna also tells to Arjun actually what is the right knowledge, like how a person to whom pain and pleasure are alike, for whom good or bad is same, who is not tormented by these sense objects becomes eligible for immortality. Men generally try to change inevitable circumstances, but Arjuna, instead of trying to change these, has thought of attaining benediction, which shows that he is the best of man. The Lord in the 14th verse, if you read the slokas, start reading it, has said that objects give rise to feelings of pleasure and pain, but these are transitory and feelings. It is proper use of desirable circumstances. If having satisfied our needs, we use these to serve the needy and the destitute instead of enjoying these ourselves. To rejoice and to grieve in favorable, unfavorable circumstances means to be tormented. To rejoice and to grieve, it means that we should be in a same plane, in a same situation by mindly and physically, whether situation is bad or good. We should do our karma. That is the true purpose of Sankhyayoga. The unreal has no existence and the real never ceases to be. This body neither existed in the past before birth nor will exist in the future. Thus, actually, it is non existent. The change in the body signifies the change in the world. Secondly, the self cannot perform any activity without assistance of the worldly. It proves that all activities takes place in the world rather than in the self. So, it is a very, very long chapter, as I can see. You will actually learn a lot of life changing things in this particular chapter. And here is also say that in the 17th and 18th verse there is a notable explanation of the real and the unreal, because the Lord wants Arjuna to realize the real. So there is a shlok for that also. Antavant ime deha ritaste yokta sharirinaha anashiyo na premasya dasmadhyasya bharata. You will read this particular shlok. It starts with Antavant ime deha nitastyokta chariranaha anashi no apremasya tasmadisya bharata. It is the 17th or 18th verse, in which it says that thus by realizing this fact he would discharge his duty. By realizing the essence, one gets rid of the unreal spontaneously. And both of them are ignorant, one who holds the soul as a slayer and the other who considers it as slain. The first half of those verse, there is a mention of discarding of worn out clothes. This example you might have heard lot of times, that the soul actually changes the body and enters it, but it cannot be finished. A soul in the person cannot be finished, it just changes it body, just like a person changes clothes. As a person discarding worn out clothes puts new one, as an embodied soul casting of old bodies. So here is something noteworthy. The world is transitory while the soul is eternal. Lord Krishna says that men identify themselves with bodies and material things, and so they do not realize that they are different from worldly things, but even then the soul remains uniform and constant all the times. In the second chapter, Lord also spoken about Karma Yoga. What is Karma Yoga? So he tells Arjun, Karma Yogi performs action to set an example to the masses without any selfish motive. By doing so, he attains equanimity. When a man discriminates between the body and the soul, he gets established in equanimity autonomically. The Karma Yoga is actually a discipline of action, is divided into two parts. Kartavya Vijanama, discipline of duty. Lord Rama from 31st verse to 37th verse mentioned the signs of duty, in which he described the favorable consequences. Some people opine constant remembrance of God is not useful unless there is concentration of mind. Dharma duty is used in two senses: charity, kindness and giving help, means money, food, clothes to the poor and suffering people, discharging one's duty according to the ordinance of scriptures by performing one's duty. Therefore, here equanimity has been called dharma. In this chapter, I personally feel that Lord has taken the, help of Sankhyayoga and Vedas. Because when you will read the slokas, just read the Bhagavad Gita, which has got some translation of English or Hindi. So in that, Lord Krishna has taken some examples of Guna and Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, through which he can actually, make Arjun understand. Like he says, action with a selfish motive is far inferior to that performed with equanimity of mind. Action with a selfish motive is far inferior to that performed with equanimity of mind. Actions have a beginning and an end, and a connection with their fruits is also temporary. Action without equanimity may lead to pain as well as to the circle of birth and death. Seek refuge in this evenness of mind. Remain established in this evenness of mind, which will enable you to realize yourself. A person endowed with equanimity becomes free from virtue. In the state of equanimity, a man, while living in the world, detaches himself from the world. This is the kind of a karma yoga that Krishna has tried to. Then, very later in the verses, Arjuna asked to Lord Krishna about the marks of a man of steadfast wisdom. Before he puts his question, he had some doubt about the superiority of the intellect or actions. Lord Krishna in the 52nd and 53rd verses said that after crossing the mire of delusion, when your intellect has become steadfast and firm on God, you will attain self-realization. The term has been used both for the enlightened God-realized soul. Now the question arises, while Arjuna put the question about the enlightenment soul only, why Lord Krishna included the striver too? The answer is that in the discipline of knowledge, aspirants generally develop disinclination towards activities. The perfect soul gets total disinclination. An aspirant of the discipline of devotion has an inclination to the recitation of divine name, meditation, association with holy men, and study of the scriptures as well. He further says that Lord Krishna clarifies the point of view expressed in this, that the person who has not controlled his mind and sense cannot have determined intellect, that he has only to realize to God, because he indulges in worldly pleasures and seeks prosperity. He whose intellect is not determinate cannot have the feeling that he has to discharge his duty by renouncing attachment and desire. That is the main motive of this whole second chapter. How can he lacks peace? How can the person, he who lacks peace, be happy? He cannot be happy. Despite acquiring all agreeable sense objects, his mental, perturbation cannot be wiped out. After listening all this, getting all this gyan also, he had some doubts, so he, asked more questions. And to remove this delusion, Lord Krishna has also spoken about the two kinds of discrimination between the real and the unreal, and discrimination between discharging one's duty and abandoning it. While explaining discrimination between discharging one's duty and abandoning it, he also said, there is nothing more welcome for a man of the warrior class, because Arjun and Pandav were from a warrior class, that a righteous war, which is an open gateway to heaven. If you do not wage it, you will incur sin. But if you fight, treating pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat like, you will not incur sin. By being free from the sense of mind and egoism, Brahma, the absolute or enlightenment, is attained. Then a man becomes free from the sense of mind, the thing that this is mine, this wife is mine, this family is, this money is mine. You will get free from that thing, from desire and from doership. The reason is that the embodied soul has sustained the universe because of egoism. So this is what all was about, of this second chapter. I end it here. I hope that you got some, the beauty of this second chapter is that this is quite lengthy. I think there are more than 20 slokas in this particular chapter. Lord Krishna has taken so much examples, so much glories, so much of Sankhyayoga, and I mean, this whole chapter is filled with a lot of different examples to make Arjuna and also we people also get so much knowledge. You might feel a little bit boring while reading it. It might take you 3 to 4 days, but just have patience. Try to, read it. And so my next chapter, like third, fourth and fifth, I think I'm gonna upload till sixth today only, so you have to wait for that, because if I pile up, you will get a little bit bored in the same video. So they will be like different sections, so you can have the insight what is in there. So tune into with me for today, and start reading Bhagavad Gita. Shraddhs are going on. Even on the last day of the Shraddh also, I think it's going to end on 15th, 14th or 15th October, by next week, Friday or Saturday. So you can definitely do something good to your Pitras. Sometimes it happens that you have obstacles in your life because of marriage or think, or even at the end of your time, that you think that you are now in the age that you are free from the responsibilities of your son, of your daughter, and now like what is in their life, still you need to please your pitras and do shraddh, because they are also a god. So Bhagavad Gita is the best way. Okay, so start reading it, whether it's no matter in which language it is. So Hare Krishna.